One of the coolest things about your whole Joe Millionaire experience is all of the famous wrestlers you got to interact with out of that. But before we get into that part, let's talk about how you became involved in that show. It ended up being a huge hit. As I mentioned in the introduction, a 20.4 rating, which is crazy. That's the biggest rating Raw ever did was like an 8.2. Biggest rating Saturday Night's main event ever did was like a 16 point something. So to put that into wrestling perspective, those are crazy numbers. But is this something that you wanted to do, become involved in reality TV, or did it kind of just fall on your lap?
This Devin, this fell in my lap, and it all stemmed from a chance meeting with some producers for Fox at a Christmas party the year prior. I had some friends from when I worked up in LA that had invited me up for a Christmas party. It was like, "What are you doing this weekend?" "Nothing. Come up for a Christmas party." This is literally, that's as easy as it was, and it just so happened to be that 8 months later they were doing a show, and they happened to remember they couldn't find a guy, and from what I was told after the fact, they went through a couple thousand guys and they couldn't find, either they had an arrest warrant or they had an STD, or and I'm not kidding. I mean, they said there were all these guys, and they said, "What about?" They asked one of my friends. They said, "What about what about Evan? Is he single?" And he goes, "Well, we'll see." And that's how it all started.
Wow. So I guess the STD check was a prerequisite.
Well, yeah, and I started to think, man, gosh, I mean, I have no like chink in my armor, according to them. I mean, I've led a pretty boring life. I was kind of offended, but whatever, you know.
Were you a ladies' man before that? Obviously, you had to be good with the girls to be cast on a show like this.
I don't, I don't know about me being a ladies' man, but I mean, I mean, yeah, I mean, it didn't. Well, let's put it this way: before I got into the show, and I had been training a lot, and I was very into fitness and stuff. So when you run in those circles, and you're at Gold's Gym, and you've got half naked girls running around, working out, yeah, you tend to you tend to test the waters probably more than you should.
So how old would you have been when you were going through that casting process for Joe Millionaire?
28.
At what point did the producers of the show reveal the concept to you that it wasn't like your average dating show, that they would pretend that you're an actual millionaire?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, they over the course of them kind of courting me to be on the show, I was living in Orange County at the time, and I didn't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of, and I wasn't making a lot of money in construction. It was more than 19,000 that they claimed. I was probably making about 40 grand, but to live in California is extremely expensive. Anyway, I would travel at the end of the day to LA from Orange County, which can be sometimes as much as 2 hours depending on the traffic. And they weren't really telling me a whole lot. They would kind of I would jump through a hoop, and they would say, "Okay, now jump through another hoop. Okay, now we need this." So one day during a meeting, I just basically told them, I said, "Look, I can't keep coming up here anymore. If you're going to use me for this show that you've got an idea for," because it was just an idea at the time. "If you're going to use it for the show, let me know now, because I don't think this is for me." And their standards and practices guy basically said, "Can I see you out in the hallway?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "This is," and he kind of showed me some papers. He goes, pulled back 3 papers, and he goes, this is, if you just be patient with us, this is what we're going to pay you." And it was $50,000. So I said, "Okay, I think I can calm down for that and kind of make a couple more trips." And then like a week later, after they, said, "Okay, you're our man. We need you to come up here because we're going to discuss the actual premise of the show." And they had me meet them at a hotel in Universal City Walk at a penthouse. And we sat down with the executive producer, and he explained the show and I signed the non-disclosure agreement, and literally 2 days later I was in France.
Wow.
Yeah, they wanted to whisk me off so I couldn't open my big mouth.
Was it something that you thought was kind of cool when you realized you'd have to work the girls? I know during the show they painted you as someone that was really uncomfortable with not telling the females that you weren't really a millionaire, but you never know with these reality shows how much is scripted and how much isn't.
I'm not so much. I'm not so sure that it was me being sick of carrying on this charade. It was as much as I was. We would go. The part of the show that was really difficult for me was that they would call them dates, but yet a date could be 4 or 5 hours in an evening. I would be with these girls for about the length of a dinner, and then they would whisk them away someplace, and I would go someplace, and I was having to get to know these girls over an hour and a half dinner. And there was a lot of lighting involved, so we'd have to stop and they'd have to redo this and redo this light. It was just very, very unnatural. And I never could figure out. I told somebody after the show, right after the show, I didn't know how they were going to carry on other shows like this because it was just such a clusterfuck, the whole filming of it. And I think I was just over it. At that point, I didn't care what they paid me. I was tired and I was just over it. I just wanted to get back home.
Which of the girls had the best body in your opinion?
Oh, Sarah had a good body. There was a girl that I let go, not Melissa Joe, but there was another Melissa. I can't think of her last name, but she had a pretty good body. Dark hair. Zora's body wasn't. I mean, Zora looks really good today. I haven't talked to her in a long time, but I've seen her in pictures. She does infomercials all the time. I don't know if you guys, how many infomercials you get up in Canada, but she does infomercials for screen doors and all kinds of stuff.
I haven't had cable for about 10 or 15 years at this point. I just watch Netflix and YouTube, but that's cool that she's still making money.
Yeah.
It's funny, a lot of people personally messaged me questions to ask you. I guess they were embarrassed to publicly post this, but there's something called the slurp heard round the world I'm supposed to ask you about. Do you remember?
Yeah. Well, for starters, I don't ever remember remember my kissing skills being that loud and sloppy. I don't. So I think a lot of that was dubbed in, and I think it was done for effect. They did that. This is a story for you. I was I probably wasn't the easiest as time went on in the filming. I probably wasn't the easiest person to deal with on that set, and so I started just having fun, messing with the production people. Whereas at one time, I actually had to be called out on it by a producer. Ray Giuliani was the one that did the interview. So when you would see me talking about a certain date or something, you didn't see Ray. Ray was the one doing the interview, but they were just using sound bites from our interview. But so this one particular night, so these chateaus were in the middle of nowhere, like literally in the middle of nowhere. So at night, and in the French countryside, it's not like America or one of these other, countries where there's just, you've got streetlights everywhere and, you've got neighborhoods that are lit up. I mean, it's when the sun goes down in the French countryside, it is black. I mean, it is dark. And one night, for some odd reason, Sarah and I were going on some walk. And I don't even know, with a flashlight or something. I don't even know what we were doing. It's kind of a haze, but I just looked at her and I said, hey, let's have a little fun with these guys. Let's turn our mics off. And because I know what had happened. They needed to change tape or they needed to do something, the camera crew that was with us. So they asked us to stop. That's what it was. And so while we're waiting for them to fix their shit, I looked at Sarah and I said, and I don't think I've told this story often, but I said, let's turn our mics off and let's just keep walking. And she started laughing. She's like, okay. So the production, the guy that was with the film crew, because it was like a 3-man film crew. You get the guy with the boom mic, and then you got the guy. We can hear them saying, hey, guys, stop. Guys, stop. Don't go too far. We won't be able to find you. Well, we ran away. We totally just took off. And we actually got down under some bushes. And the thing is, Devin, is that it was scary as shit out there, and you couldn't see anything. And we were so far from the chateau that the camera guy and the boom guy and whatever producer was with them, we could hear them like scared shitless. How do we get out of here? Do you know the way back? I mean, it was pitch black, and she and I are sitting there just kind of laughing and kidding around. And so I've always thought that they did the slurping scene as kind of a jab back to me in their editing, because supposedly it pissed off people all the way up to the network, because they were reporting back to the network what was going on every day or every couple of days. And this was before you could like send something over computer. Like, I don't even know what the technology is now, but you had to actually physically mail a tape. I mean, it's hard to believe that just in 2002 we were still mailing tapes, but that's what they did. You didn't send it in a file on a computer. At least it's not what I was told. So anyway, yeah, Ray Giuliani was pissed the next day. He was told to sit down with me and tell me never to do that again, or they were going to pack up and go home. And I knew they weren't going to pack up and go home. We were near the end, and I'm like, you're not going to scrap. I was that smart. I was like, you're not going to scrap millions of dollars of production just because she and I ran away and hid from your camera crew. I mean, come on. But anyway.
How far were you going with these girls when you guys had your dates and your overnight encounters?
Couldn't do a whole lot, Devin. I mean, I get the question all the time, hey, how many of those girls did you bang? Well, you couldn't do anything, because there was all of these, unless you wanted to shoot a porn, you couldn't, there were cameras everywhere. So you couldn't get away to have your own. See, that's what would have been better, as if, not for the sake of fucking, but that's what would have been better, if they had just given us time to get to know each other, and it would have become more natural, and then film us. But they're in the mindset, we can't miss a moment. So if they do something that we're not around to see, we got to catch it on film. And a lot of times that can get in the way, but it worked out. Obviously it worked out. It got good viewers. So did something right.
So in the scenes, for instance, where you're in bed with the girls, there's actually a camera crew in the room with you. It's not just remote cameras recording.
No, if we were in our own bedrooms, they had cameras that, like almost like a Nest camera. They would have cameras planted in the room, around the room. So a camera crew was very rarely ever in your private area. The bathrooms didn't have cameras, obviously. But yeah, the rooms had several cameras at different angles that were set up.
Did you ever have any incidents where you actually, let's say, got a little bit hard and you didn't want it to show on camera when you're making out with these girls?
I'm sure. I mean, I guess I'm pretty good after years of having to hide it so many times as a kid. I'm pretty good at getting it down so it hangs down between my knees, Debbie. Come on. You just
And
wear tighter underwear.
there's a lot of questions about the butler. How did you get along with the butler? Because I guess he did a show where he said he didn't like the girls. He thought they were low class for not liking the food and so forth. Did you get along with them?
Yeah, he was a good guy. Paul Hogan was his name, and he was a great guy. And I do remember now he would roll his eyes a lot when the girls would turn their nose up at certain things, food and stuff. But he was a real butler, Devin. I mean,
Oh, really?
he was a real butler that they had hired. I mean, and that was good casting, because they figured, why are we going to hire a guy and expect him to know what a butler does? They just hired an actual butler. Good
So
guy, really good guy.
would he be someone you would talk to, since I guess he would have probably been the most down to earth guy on the set?
Well, that's the thing. I talked to the production people more than I would talk to the people that were considered the talent on the show. I didn't talk to the girls unless we were filming, and I really didn't talk to Paul unless we were filming. But because Paul was kind of an island unto himself, as far as he was kind of just the butler over here, and then it was me and the girls. Sometimes he would be with production, so I would see him out because I went to dinner a lot with the production crew. Because at first they were going to have me in the chateau with the girls, and then when we got there, they changed up they had me with them, and then when we would need to film, I would go meet the girls wherever we needed to.
Okay. So what happened with you and the girl that you chose Zora? Why didn't that work out? Obviously, it's not like a real relationship if you're dating under those circumstances, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't go anywhere. We got back to the States, and literally I tell people all the time, or we got off, we had the same flight back, but I went, and no one, see, at that time we were on that flight, but no one knew, because the show wasn't out yet. So no one knew that we had been on a TV show. And so we were able to walk through the airport and no one knew who we were. But she literally went right and I went left, and we never talked again. We talked a few times over the years, but that was it. I
So
had,
there was no consummation of that relationship.
no, and it was actually, to tell you the truth, and I've mentioned this a few times. At the time, before I went on that show, I was dating a girl that lived here in Orange County, and it's crazy because even during this show, I was talking to her on the phone. I've told people, if the production company got the phone bill from that hotel in Amboise, which was right outside of Paris, I can't imagine how big that thing was, because I was calling Amy damn near every night, and we were talking for a couple hours every night, and they had to have known. They had to have wondered who I was talking to for 2 hours every night. But and so when I got back, I was kind of eager to get back together with her, and it never happened. She ended up finding somebody else, and I ended up on my tour, my promotional tour.
So no wonder you're a little bitter about the show. You didn't even get one of those girls in the end.
Yeah, it was a I got some money out of it, you know what I mean, and I got plenty of girls after that, so
Oh,
it wasn't a total loss.
so yeah, that must have helped you a lot because I saw some clips. I'm surprised there's no full episodes online, but I saw some clips of the episodes, and they really presented you as a good guy, the boy next door. So that must have helped you in real life. I'm sure there was groupies and so forth.
No, there weren't. No, there weren't any groupies. But you know, Devin, it's amazing because I didn't, it's not like I was an athlete, like a, I don't know, pick somebody like a Mark McGuire who had the most home runs, or it's not, you know, or I had like a number one hit out and I was a heavy metal band. I didn't have groupies like that. I just, in every, if I ever did a signing someplace, or if I had to go to a town to promote, you've got your, you've got your girls that, they want to fuck a guy that's been on TV. I mean, it's some of them are like that, and yeah, I mean, but I never had groupies. I never had a group of girls waiting outside, waiting in the lobby of the hotel. I wasn't like Ric Flair telling them in interviews that I'd be at the Marriott and in room 840.
Some people
It
have
would have been
said
fun.
at that period of time, you were one of like possibly the most famous person in America for that brief period of time where the show was getting those monster ratings. Were you shocked at how well the show did and how big a star you were for that period?
I didn't know any better. The production and the network were telling me how great the ratings were, but I didn't know anything about TV, so I didn't know anything about ratings. I didn't, and they would say, "Hey, last night we had 20 million viewers," and I'd be like, "Is that a lot?" I mean, I was, it was kind of good to be that kind of aloof, um, because yeah, I didn't think about it a whole lot. Well, I sent you one of the people from the network years ago sent me a framed thing that they thought, and it was a sweet gesture. They sent me a framed, like it had different copies of the rating sheets, and they're all on a mat and everything. And I had them in my storeroom, and I remembered it yesterday when we were talking before this, and I didn't really, I don't know what any of those numbers mean. I mean, I know they're good, and I know that, but I never paid attention to it much.
Did the producers try to influence your decisions at all when you were choosing the girls that you were keeping on the show?
Yeah. Not they just tried to throw little hints out. Like I think they really wanted me to choose Sarah over Zora. But it wasn't a, you're going to choose this girl, whether you like it or not kind of thing. They just said, they would say, over dinner, don't you like her better? And what is it that you like about this girl over this girl? So I think if they had their way, they would have picked who I brought along. But no, I mean, I squashed that when I saw it coming, because I was going to pick who I wanted, and that was it.
Were you surprised how well it went when you had to let the girls know that you weren't the multimillionaire?
I wasn't surprised, but I mean, I told Zora. Zora was the one that I divulged it to, and she was such a sweet gal that, I mean, here's a girl that was heating her apartment by turning her stove on, and she lived in Jersey. I mean, and she said that she goes, I heated my apartment with my stove. I mean, if that's not poor, I don't know what is. So, so she was pretty humble, and I, when they offered her, because they offered us $1 million, and if she had said that she wasn't interested in me, I was going to get the whole million, and if she decided to go along with it, she would get half of that million. So it was kind of like being married. She took half of what I had.
Didn't they make you tell the blonde as well before? I seem to recall they made you tell the
Sarah,
second girl.
Sarah.
Yeah.
I think they had me tell Sarah, and she didn't seem to well, see, here was what they would do, and this is a trick. So what they did with Sarah, she wasn't disappointed when I told her. But what they did to Sarah was they had Sarah go down to the area, the foyer of the chateau where the couch was. And this is a little trick that they use. They they had her go down there, we'll say at 10 o'clock in the morning. Get ready, get on. And they make her sit there for 3 hours. Well, it's like sitting in the doctor's office. After about the first hour, you're like, what the fuck are we doing? And that's exactly what she did. She started getting antsy. Why can't I leave? Oh, we're getting lighting right. And I remember, God, I think it was Paul that told me that they did that, because he was there the whole time. And he goes, yeah, they made that poor girl sit there for 3 hours. Well, by the time we shot, she was pissed.
Right.
And they did was they were filming her the whole time for that 3 hours. So what they did was, if you notice in the show, I tell her, yeah, I'm not really a millionaire. I'm this construction worker. And they cut to her face. Well, they cut me totally out, and they cut to her with this, pissy face. Well, that was from 2 hours before when they made her sit there.
Right.
Does that make sense?
And in those days, I don't even think there was text messaging yet. It may have just been starting, or internet on the phone. So she wouldn't even have had a cell phone really to play
Can,
around on.
can you imagine sitting there for 3 hours and nothing to do but stare at the wall and a bunch of production people? You weren't allowed to talk to anybody, and that's what they did. So to get the reaction, the sour puss reaction on her face, they put her through that for 3 hours, and that's kind of ingenious to think about something like that.
So what was your favorite part of the show? I know there's a lot you didn't like, but there had to have been some highlights for you, other than the money.
Yeah. Um, the people that I mean, there were some pretty good people on that production crew, and the friends that I made, and the travel. We went all through the south of France. We went to Corsica, and we went to Cap Ferrat, and just the experience. I mean, I was able to stay in a $5,000 a night room in Cap Ferrat at the Grand Hotel for 2, 3, almost 4 nights, and that was. I mean, who gets to experience that, Devin? I'm and so I don't. I don't regret any of that. I mean, it was a good time, and then um, yeah, it was just the experiences of it.
You had a lot of meals that looked really delicious. Was there one particular meal that stands out to you that was your favorite?
Oh yeah, yeah. There was one that no one ever saw, and it was when I was having dinner with the production company that night in a little teeny restaurant. I mean, I don't even know how we fit in this place, and it was in the town where we were staying in Amboise, France. And I didn't speak French, and we had people there that did, but I just said I was jonesing for a steak, but they didn't have steak. They had this sliced beef that came, and I'm telling you, they it was I've never seen a plate of beef like this in my entire life. It was just nothing but beef, sliced beef, and to this day I've never had a steak or beef like it since. I don't know what they did, but I always remember that meal.
Now, France has a reputation for being rude to Americans and not liking Americans very much. Did you notice that, or did everyone treat you pretty well?
No, I didn't notice that much at all. And when we were filming, I had a PA that was supposed to kind of be my handler that would follow me around and make sure I didn't get into trouble. And we got along with the people in the little towns and stuff wherever we would go. And yeah, no, everybody was very, very friendly.
The craziest part of your whole experience, from listening to some of the other interviews you did with Rick Bassman on his Talking Tough podcast and some other ones, was that you were making tons of money from appearances after this show ended, and you actually had enough and stopped making these, what, 10 to 15 grand appearances for just sitting in a mall doing autographs.
It No, it was, yeah. I mean, I I, I just needed a break. I was, and this isn't the kind of break that I just wasn't having fun. And I know it's hard for people to. That's why it's difficult. That's why I don't talk about it much, because it's difficult for people to relate to. Um, it, you're by yourself, basically, because I had a security guy that Fox put with me that would go with me, but it's just a lonely. I don't know. I was in a different city every day, and I was worn out from the travel, and I and I'll tell you the big part was that I was getting sick of repeating myself. People asking me the same questions over and over and over, and I just literally I was just worn slam out, Devin, and that's why I think, God, at least if I'd been wrestling, I'd have had a camaraderie, almost like a fraternity of guys, and you're having fun, and you're maybe making money, and even if you're not, you're there's a purpose. I had no purpose, man. I was landing in the middle of the night, sleeping for a couple hours. Depending on what coast I was on, I'd have to wake up at 3 o'clock here to do a 6 o'clock interview on the East Coast for a radio station, and I'd just flown in and gotten in at 2 o'clock in the morning, and that happened a lot. And then I'd be whisked off to a mall to do these signings, and then I'd try to get back to the hotel to sleep, but I couldn't because I had to do TV interviews. And it was like, even the security guy that was with me, it was a really good guy. Bruce was his name. He said to me one night at dinner, he said, I've been on a lot of, I've taken care of the affairs of a lot of people for Fox. And he goes, I've never been in anything like this in my life, because everywhere I went, he had to go. So I was sleep deprived. That meant he was sleep deprived. And I mean, he looked at me one night over dinner, and his eyes were like red holes. He just kind of looked up at me. He was like, man, he goes, how do you do this? I said, I don't do this. I said, thank God there's some alcohol. But this was before Red Bull. I wish Red Bull had been around then. I would have loved it. All I did, Devin, was I wasn't saying I was sick of the money, because how do you get sick of it? I just wanted a break. I just told my manager, I said, man, I need to ratchet this back and let me take a couple weeks off. And he said to me, he goes, well, you can't take a couple weeks off. The minute you're gone, you can't go back through that door. You got to keep that, and I didn't believe him, and he was right. I think I took a month off from making appearances just so I could, and he couldn't book me on anything after that. It was crazy, because TV had moved on to the next big thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
TV had moved on, and that's fine. I made some good money. I spent a lot of money. I partied a lot, and I had a good experience, and just chalked it up to that.
Any crazy fan incidents doing those tours or anything like that?
I gotta say no. Nothing out of the ordinary. I mean, if it might come to me, nothing is standing out. I know there was a girl in Valdosta, Georgia, that yeah. Anyway, that was we won't go there.
All right. Did you ever get married or anything in real life? No,
never.
Didn't throw in the towel yet.
Do I?
You didn't throw in the towel yet.
No,
You're still out there.
No.
Now, I guess probably if that whole Joe Millionaire thing didn't happen, you did a great accomplishment, by the way, with those ratings. It is impressive, even though it doesn't seem like you did anything. You got killer ratings, which is hard to do. Is there any reason why you think the next season of the show was kind of a failure? Because I think they only ever did 2 seasons.
Can't do it twice.
Yeah.
I think, once you do something like that, and I've never, Devin, I'll just make this, I'll kind of set everybody straight. We didn't get the ratings because this mug was on it. We got the ratings because of the concept of the show. They could have put any fella in there and had that concept based around any guy. And I will believe that till the day I die. There was nothing I did that drove those ratings. It was people were interested in the concept of the show of girls that were being duped and were considered gold diggers, and any guy could have stepped into that spot and probably even done a better job than I did. So, and that's not me trying to be humble. I have never been able to figure out why 40 million people would tune in to see a guy that did nothing. I mean, and that's how I feel about it.
Well, I've heard you say you would have been a good heel in wrestling. That's not a very good heelish answer.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news updates. Support us on patreon.com for $1.99 a month to watch our full shoot interviews ad-free and help our channel grow. Follow us on Twitter at the Hannibal TV for instant updates.